Welcome back to another Mindfulness and Money. This time, this module series is all for entrepreneurs. If you're an aspiring entrepreneur or you currently are an entrepreneur, this module is for you. And if you're an artist, you are an entrepreneur. So just making sure that we're all on the same page. My name's Rhiannon Rosalind. I'm the founder of Conscious Economics. I'm a serial entrepreneur who's been in business for well over a decade. And I'm joined here by Aseel El-Baba. She's our in-house financial therapist and also an entrepreneur. Special shout out and thank you to Interact for believing in this vision of mindfulness and money for entrepreneurs and helping us create this two-part series. So let's get started and break it down for you. The old economy is anything that is related to the way things used to be. So business as traditional, business as usual. What did we picture traditionally when we thought about business? You probably think about corporations, you think about a lot of rules and infrastructure. The new economy is this fresh, new perspective around how we can create business and a society that is a bit more holistic. New economy is really about taking new ideas around sustainability, social justice, art, creativity, and putting those things within an economic framework and business context. When I talk about the conscious economy, I like to think of these 4 pillars as the foundational basis for what that value system looks like. So it's people, planet, profit, and art. What do I mean by that? In the new conscious economy, the well-being of people is a pillar of it, meaning that we focus on not only the physical well-being of laborers and people within society, but the mental and emotional well-being, the conscious well-being. When we think about the planet pillar, it's not just about sustainable practice that really takes care of the planet. It's also thinking about our relationship with nature, our relationship with the environment around us, and creating business and economy through that lens. When we think about the profit pillar, it's not just the traditional old economy, profit is everything, profit at the expense of people and planet. In this framework, profit is really used as a tool for social change. How can we use profitable concepts to be able to build a more sustainable world and system? And the last pillar is art. This one always throws people for a loop, but I see entrepreneurs as artists. I really see creativity and seeding creativity and innovation as an important, probably the most important pillar. So as entrepreneurs right now out there in the world, and new economy entrepreneurs, if that's how you define yourself, then you're thinking about how your business ideas and the way that you run and sustain your business fit into those pillars. If you can check off those pillars, you got yourself a conscious economy business.
This is essentially a really great framework that you can utilize to not only build a strategic business plan to grow your business, but also have it as a reference point.
With you being our financial therapy expert, I really wanted to talk to you about limiting beliefs. A lot of the times when we think about becoming an entrepreneur, in order to become empowered, we need to sometimes understand and bring consciousness to where we are disempowered.
Absolutely.
What are some of the most common limiting beliefs around building wealth and creating a business and being an entrepreneur?
Sure. I've prepared 6 limiting beliefs to share with you today, and I'm also going to tell you how it translates into action. So the first one is I'm not good enough. And this is a very common one. The way it really shows up at work is by undercharging yourself, which means you actually end up working much more for much less. And that is something that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning of their journey, battle with. We sometimes mistake the fact that we are new as an entrepreneurs with the fact that we are new in an industry, when in reality, a lot of us have already had like a track record. For example, for me, I have over a decade of experience in the financial industry, but when I sometimes put a price point for a certain service, I'm acting as if I'm a new person in this specific industry because I just started my business. But it can also be showing up in a different way, and this is where you constantly sign up for courses and training programs and hire coaches, because you're constantly feeling like you need to improve who you are in order to improve your services and your products, especially if it's coming from a space of lack versus, oh, I identified this as an area I would love to improve myself in, and I'm doing that consciously. So it's not about the action, it's more about the underlying motive behind it.
That makes so much sense. It's almost like that failure to launch because you're like, I need more education, I need more support, I need to have it all on paper, when sometimes as an entrepreneur, yes, the plan is important, but it's like you got to get out and execute because that's how you start to learn.
So the second limiting belief is I'm not worthy. And at first glance, you think, okay, that's like almost the same as I'm not good enough. However, it may show up differently in the way you conduct your work. And that is by actually giving too much for free. It's different than undercharging or charging less than you deserve. You're giving a lot of things for free because you don't think you're worthy of making that profit or scaling that business. If you're, let's say, in the service industry, or you have like a 15-minute complimentary consultation call, often sometimes people who are operating from this belief of I'm not worthy may potentially extend that call to be like a good hour and a half to prove their worth. And they instead of having a paid session out of that, they extended their complimentary session and gave away their time for free. So it may be subtle in the way it shows up in our work, but it stems from that unworthiness seed.
I've been guilty of both of these
Same
limiting
here.
beliefs for sure.
Yes.
And I had to learn the hard way, definitely. And I think there becomes this point where you're giving so much and you're working so hard and you're not seeing the reward come in because you're standing in your own way.
So the third limiting belief is I don't deserve it. The I don't deserve it belief looks like hitting a wall or an upper limit to the growth that we experience in our business. So we can never go beyond a certain profit threshold or beyond a certain number of customers that we service or an area or geographical area that we're trying to scale into.
I think that this is so common. And one of the things that we all know we do with social media is this like comparison game where we look at other people's posts and we think, oh, they have a better life than me or they're doing different things. And we realize that people are only posting like their best days, not their worst days. That happens with business too.
And then we have that it's not good enough, and that refers to the work that we're doing, be it a product, a service, art, whatever it is we produce. And that leads us to overworking, over-perfecting, and actually overgiving, impacting our bottom line, impacting our profit margins, and all these different things. And it's very connected to that idea that our work is just never enough on its own. So it seeps into the decisions we make around how to market it and sell it. The fifth limiting belief is it's not safe to be successful. What that translates to as far as action is concerned is you may actually sabotage your own success, not follow through. It's like somebody can actually give you an opportunity, give you their own business card, and you may lose that business card eventually, or not follow through a sale that you were almost certain you were gonna close, or even avoid any opportunity to shine. And that is a lot to do with what associations you have. Like maybe some people are gonna give me the evil eye, or people are gonna be so jealous of me, or people are only going to be attracted to me because of my wealth and success and not for who I am. So there could be so many different ways in how we associate this safety component of success and wealth, but it's worth visiting what it means for you, because whatever it means for you determines the actions you're taking to either avoid it or seek it.
Even this idea of perhaps your family had just not a good outlook on entrepreneurship as being a viable option. They prefer you to be in, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be something that's more guaranteed. We have this belief that we can't be successful in it because we've been indoctrinated with that belief from other family members or a partner or friend group.
Now, the last limiting belief number 6 is I'm not important. And the way this shows up is essentially feeling that everybody else is more important than you are, which means their time is more important, their needs are more important. So you're constantly putting yourself last and you're not honoring what it is that you need and what it is that you actually feel or deem to be important for you. I want to take you back to the very, very beginning of this conversation and the question that prompted all these limiting beliefs. What are some of the limiting beliefs that people have about wealth? When you look at all these statements I said, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve it, it's not good enough, it's not safe to shine or be successful, and I'm not important. On the surface level, actually none of them is like directly correlated to wealth. And that's because it's never about wealth and it's never about money, because money is a symbol. The relationship we have with wealth is a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. So it's really important to understand some of our limiting beliefs aren't directly correlated with money, and yet they show up in a way that impacts our financial situation and financial confidence.
Thank you for walking us through those. The next question that I really have and that I'd love for all of us to be able to learn together is around this idea of cognitive biases. So what are some of the most common cognitive biases that people hold around entrepreneurship and creating their own business.
So to define what cognitive biases is to begin with, a simple way to think about it is how our minds sometimes trick us, or like the perception in which we see things that may actually alter the reality of the situation. The first one I've prepared today is called the loss aversion. Because we feel so much more pain from losing something than it is to feel the pleasure of gaining the exact same thing, we may go out of our way to avoid risk because we're scared of the loss it potentially has associated with it. So the other bias I have prepared is called the endowment effect. And the endowment effect is essentially placing a higher value on the things that we own. Sometimes it's a service, sometimes it's a product. We automatically feel so much more value associated with it than maybe what the market is ready for. And this endowment effect actually skews our way in which we evaluate certain things. It makes it harder for us to let go of the things that we need to let go of, which actually is very correlated with the third bias I prepared, and it's called the sunk cost fallacy. When we invest in a specific product or a specific service and realize that it's failing, like this is not a service that's just not gonna go anywhere, which happens, like I said, it's part of the journey.
Yeah.
It's so hard for us to let go of something we've already invested in.
Yeah.
Then we end up putting even more money into it, increasing the loss versus accepting the loss to begin with.
That's so interesting, and I've done that myself so many times. Sometimes it's really hard to pivot when you kind of see the writing on the wall, but you've put so much time and energy, and so you just want to keep pushing it and rolling with it.
Yeah.
And that is really what I think can cause a lot of stress and psychological hardship. And we keep running with something, we burn ourselves out, and then we just lose our confidence.
The fourth one is the familiarity bias, giving a higher value to things that you're familiar with. Not necessarily things that are better, but just because you may be familiar with them, automatically you gravitate towards that option.
Where it's shown up for me is I've had certain customers that I'm more comfortable working with.
Yes.
I'll end up choosing, that project with the more familiar customer, even though there may be a better opportunity with the area or the group that I maybe don't have as much experience in.
Great example. Then you have the status quo bias, and essentially that goes back to our fear of change. Change represents a potential risk, which also represents a potential loss. So a status quo bias is our tendency to prefer the baseline of how things currently are. Even though we as entrepreneurs are risky by nature, sometimes we may fall in that trap as well and fear taking risk, even though our literally livelihood depends on it when you're an entrepreneur. And lastly, it's called the bandwagon effect. It tells us that the value of the choice that we make differs based on the baseline that we're comparing it to, which means when the reference point changes, so does our perception of the outcome. So for example, I can come and share with you a recent service that I launched and how successful my campaign has been. And I may be happy with this outcome. And then you share with me a success story that you've experienced in your business that actually led to a higher profit margin than what I'm sharing with you. And that naturally changes the baseline, the reference point for me. I'm no longer comparing myself to maybe a previous campaign I've launched. I'm now comparing myself to the profit margin you shared. And that bandwagon effect ultimately shifts the way I perceive and feel about the success I just shared with you.
And I see a lot of businesses doing this and a lot of them failing because of that, because it's not coming from the essence of what they really want to create. They're just trying to follow that latest next trend.
So now that I spoke about the biases, Rhiannon, I really want to bring it back to you because part of this new economy movement is taking into consideration social change and being conscious humans who are constantly looking at how to better our world. So how do we explore social change and social innovation through business?
When we look around at the world and all of the different issues that are presenting, a lot of us feel drawn to some more than others. Some people feel more drawn to social justice. Some people feel really passionate about health and wellness and the intersection of those things. It can go on and on. What I mean by creating a socially conscious business is first starting off with feeling where your heart and your alignment is with the most important issue and creating products, services, and businesses that are in line with helping those. The next piece is being able to structure your business in such a way that you can actually create social change while running your business. A lot of the times we call this social enterprise modeling of business, where there will be a profit component, but there's also a give back component. Organizations and business leaders are figuring out ways to benefit the planet, to benefit public policy, but also create business. The other space is obviously as artists are entrepreneurs. They may not always define themselves that way, but using art as a vehicle for social change and social innovation. So creating pieces of work that actually have an undertone or a message of conscious transformation, of innovation, and being able to put those products out into the world that serve as ability to spark dialogue around important conversations, also can drive product value as well.
Because we're talking about all these amazing concepts, we also need tools that help us translate these concepts into reality, into action. And this is where mindfulness tools come in place to support discovery for ourselves and also understanding how are we going to show up in this world as business owners and entrepreneurs. So let's talk about some mindfulness tools. Some of the mindfulness tools that come to my mind is actually, one of them is called the body check-in. The very first thing we experience is sensation in our body. That sensation then leads to emotion, thought, and then action. But because we are so disconnected from our bodies, we actually don't even know the sensations we're experiencing. So slowing down is important. When we do a body check-in, we start with certain breath techniques to slow down, and then we become aware of certain things in our body. It could be a feeling in our stomach. It could be noticing our heartbeat. It could be a temperature, like feeling hot or cold. The more you then understand what these signals are telling you, because they're telling you something.
Yeah.
They may tell you that this is a good deal for you. They may tell you to avoid a specific project. And it's very problematic that we're constantly living in a society that's such a hustle, fast-paced environment that we really forget the one tool that we are literally born with. It's our body.
The other thing that I really highly recommend is journaling as another mindfulness tool that we can use for business. If you go to, let's say, a business networking event, and you work the room, and when you leave, you have a bunch of memories in your mind of different ideas and people. When you go home and you actually journal right away, write down all of the different feelings, all of the different, inspirational ideas that came through that session, and then you don't have to act on it right away, but you have it. Later, you can go back to it, you can reference it, and you can remember in the moment what some of those things are. But I think it's so good to be able to check in with yourself and see what you were and where you are at in different stages along your journey. And it's just something that can really, really benefit anyone.
The last tool I'll share here is creating space to be versus to do. When you're an entrepreneur, it's very easy for us to get into this doing mode, especially sometimes there's guilt associated with resting because the hustle culture is very ingrained in us. And I'm all about hard work, but I'm also about smart work. And the new economy is about balance, rejuvenation, along with smart work. So it's not just about work, it's about living life to the fullest as we build the businesses that we're passionate about. So taking care of yourself along the way is important. And one way you can do that is scheduling this time where it's like a soulful day. And that day is created with the intentionality that you're gonna go with the flow and do what you feel like. Learning how to connect with your intuition and your impulse and learning how to be in the world. Because these are actually tools that will eventually help you in business. But because we're disconnected from them, we often don't even know they're there. So it's important to create that space where you're mindfully connecting with yourself and the world around you.
It's a unique and individual journey for every single person. And I know for myself, I'm a mom at this point of 2 boys. So I want my business to be able to reflect that in the hours that I keep, in the way that I work. Entrepreneurship can really provide you that opportunity to create your own schedule, your own infrastructure around the way that you live and work. work.
Please take a pause and ask yourself, what are some of these themes that you care about, and how can you design a life around it, not the other way around.
Are there any financial therapy tools that we can use to kind of test if our business idea or the way that we're structuring our business is actually aligned with our personal core values?
One of my favorite tools to teach, whether it's personal or professional, it's called the value-based accounting. Like, if you look at a budget, it's very boring. Like, all the names on there usually have a lot of emotions associated with it, like a mortgage, a loan, a credit card. Value-based accounting is actually reclaiming these categories in our life and renaming them based on things that matter to us, based on our values. So for example, instead of putting mortgage or whatever, maybe you want to call it your sacred space, or maybe it's like home sweet home. So that's the first step that you do, is you take a regular budget for your business and you translate all these different categories, infuse them with your values, and change the way you refer to these items in ways that truly reflect the value behind them. The second route to do that is look at the most important values in your life, be it health, relationship, growth, creativity, whatever your values are. How much money are you spending on these values? Even if there's a disconnection between that, that means your spending habits right now are not a reflection of who you are when they should be.
So to end this off, now that you've gone through this mindfulness and money module, and we hope that you're building financial confidence, we hope that you're building business confidence, and you're realizing how mindfulness and consciousness can actually support you as an entrepreneur, we want to leave you off with how you get started.
What I did is something called ikigai. Ikigai is a Japanese concept, and it's the intersection of what am I good at? What does the world need? What can I get paid for? And what am I passionate about? And it's really the intersectionality of these four components that creates that sweet spot. That was my starting point, is going through this exercise and realizing, boom, financial therapy. This is how I landed here.
I love it. And I would say that my best piece of advice is, number one, just going for it. Just starting. So if you are interested in starting your own conscious business, becoming an entrepreneur, if you're somebody who comes from a diverse background and you haven't really seen a lot of entrepreneurs that maybe look like you or come from the same framework as you do, then we would love to talk to you. We would love to support you. The new economy and the conscious economy is really about seeing new people in positions of power. That's how we're going to transform and change the economy. That's how we're going to build something more sustainable, more equitable. It's when we actually put ourselves in the arena and go out there and create the things that we wish we saw out in the world. Thank you so much for being here today. Check out our next module and stay tuned for more upcoming events.